Hello guys, this is Donald's Movies, and today I'm going to be discussing the Druids and how powerful they are in the lore, going through their history, characteristics, and how they would fare against other classes. So without further ado, let's get into the lore. Thousands of years ago, the Titans cleansed the world of the old god corruption. After they had departed, the Titanic keepers they entrusted were left to order the world. Freya, in particular, created vast enclaves of nature as well as the Emerald Dream, subsequently leading to the appearance of the wild gods. Seeing these creatures as her children, she linked their spirits to the Emerald Dream, essentially turning them into demigods. Many would say druidism began at this point, but really the modern form practiced by mortals would start quite some time later. A son of a wild god by the name of Cenarius would be the first to really start teaching this art. He watched over many native races, one of them being the ancient Tauren, but he was particularly set on the very promising, newly created race known as the Night Elves. At first they were great students, but unfortunately later down the line, many had distanced themselves from the ways of the nature and started expanding their knowledge of the world of eternity and arcane magic. Soon enough, as Cenarius realized that they were more interested in expanding and building their empire, he left. However, a few thousand years later, he did take on a student by the name of Malfurion Stormrage, fully immersing him in the art of druidism. Previously, he did teach Night Elves and Yongol, but that was a lot more basic, making Malfurion the first real mortal druid. With this new skill set, he played a crucial role in repelling the Burning Legion during the War of the Ancients. Subsequently, Malfurion became a new leader, making druidism a central aspect of the new Night Elven society. In the following years, the Druids played an important role in protecting the world as well as keeping the balance of the nature. When it comes to the Tauren, they were also one of the original druidic races, although they were disconnected and didn't really have the same mainstream guidance as the Night Elves had through Malfurion. Nonetheless, they did manage to eventually get back to their roots. However, there are two other races that only recently started getting into druidism: the Trolls and the Worgen. Trolls, as a native race, always had a connection with nature, but it was mainly through the Loa by serving them and making sacrifices. In the recent years though, select individuals had a connection with the Emerald Dream, getting a taste of more traditional druidism. Yet, even though they practice it, it is still not the exact same form that the other races use, and it is more of an extension of their own voodoo magic. Lastly, there are the Worgen, who are also a new addition. The Worgen themselves were once Night Elven druids that became feral and were imprisoned inside the Emerald Dream. However, most of the today's Worgen are actually just Gilnean humans that were infected by the curse when the original Worgen were freed. Surprisingly, Gilneans actually took advantage of some druidism in the past because they were isolated as a kingdom and they needed to use as much land as possible. These practitioners utilized the bare basic druidism and were known as the Harvest Witches. In the recent years with the Worgen curse, the powers of the Harvest Witches were amplified significantly, and this, plus their connection with the Night Elves, made the Worgen an actual druidic race. So, with all of this backstory, how exactly do druids work and what are their abilities? The Druids and their training formed an extraordinary connection with nature, and the way they utilize their magic is through balance. What this means is that they can ask the nature to do something, but it always requires a sacrifice. For example, life essence would need to be sacrificed in order for a druid to heal another living being. The big issue with this is the fact that nature won't always respond, and only few druids are really able to have great control. However, as a class, they're incredibly versatile, being able to take almost any combat role. Their shape-shifting abilities allow them to transform into various animals. A druid can turn into a bear when he's heavily wounded to sustain the damage easier, or just soak up hits on the front lines. He can also take a more sneaky approach in cat form to ambush the enemy with increased speed and agility. The thing is, in the lore, the druids are able to take on a lot more forms than they can in the game and can shapeshift into almost any animal. This of course heavily depends on the training of the druid and his ability to bind with the spirit of the chosen animal. On top of shapeshifting and healing, druids can also cause great destruction through nature itself. They can call upon thunderstorms, earthquakes, and other various numerous disasters. Aside from this, they can call upon the forests, being able to command roots to entangle their foes and turn trees to fight on their side. The biggest weakness, however, is that the power of the druids heavily depends on their environment. A druid in a wasteland or even a closed down space would be almost useless when compared to a forest. It is just not possible to call upon trees to fight for you when there are no trees, or to obliterate your enemies with a thunderstorm when you're inside of a building. Nonetheless, in their natural habitat, they are a pretty significant threat. So, with all of these various abilities, how would the druids fare against the other available classes? In this case, due to the so many factors involved, there is really no point in comparing it to all of the classes, as every single scenario would be dependent on the circumstances. For example, druids could defeat almost everyone, but all of those classes could also defeat them. Bear form isn't that much of an advantage when a hunter can have a bear while he's also shooting at the druid, or cat form isn't going to be as useful when a rogue is also as sneaky and as agile. However, there are a few classes that would be very good counters, one of them being the Death Knights. The Death Knights practice death magic, and life and death are obviously complete opposites. The thing is though, when it comes to destruction, usually the more harmful magic would be the more effective one when it comes to combat. Plus, the Death Knights also wear Serenite armor that would grant them great protection against any magic attacks. Alongside them, there are the mages, warlocks, and the shadow priests, who would also be very effective. Their magic is incredibly destructive, especially the warlocks, and they would have a significant advantage. However, it doesn't mean that a druid wouldn't be able to defeat any of these classes, it's just that he would have a very hard time shielding against their magic. Lastly, there are also the shamans, who in my opinion are almost equal in strength and as a class are generally very similar. Both of them ask for favors, and while the druids connect with all of the living spirits of the nature, the shamans focus on the elementals and the non-living aspects. A lot of their spells can be quite similar, and because of this, I think they are a very equal match. All in all, the druids are very versatile with countless abilities in the lore and various forms they can take. Through their training, they can reach incredible heights of power, one example being Malfurion Stormrage, who is one of the strongest mortals on Azeroth. However, very few druids actually reach this level of power, so because of this, when it comes to the ranking, I would say that the druids are medium with incredible growth potential. The main reason for this decision is because their magic is very delicate and dependent on the environment, so while a druid would be significantly empowered in Moonglade, in an area like Hellfire Peninsula he would be much weaker. For example, a Legion base would be his biggest enemy, as those worlds have been stripped of all life. On top of this, just because a druid is in a forest, it doesn't mean that you would be able to control the entire forest, as this depends heavily on the power of the individual. In conclusion, the druids are very strong when it comes to their own purpose, and even though they have some apparent weaknesses, they are an instrumental part of keeping a world alive. Alright, and that is all I have for this video. Do leave your thoughts on the druids and how powerful you think they are, and do keep in mind that these are just my own opinions based on the available lore facts, and there is just so much room left for speculation. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this, and like the video as it really helps out and keeps the channel going. Thanks a lot for taking the time out of the day to watch this video, and see you next time.